believer in things happening for a reason. And so here I am, running for city council. I started out in mid-March. Got more than enough ballot signatures. And it's been quite an adventure. Let me tell you where I stand on the tax issues. On PSPRS, I don't intend to cut off my nose to spite my face. We're going to be paying less tax total if all three taxes pass than we were paying 2 years ago. I think that we owe the debt. If you're a citizen of Prescott, you're going to be taking the brunt of this. It's easy to say, oh yeah, we're going to make the state legislature react. But you know what? Noel took a real good issue down to the state legislature, and we thought he was all going to get it passed. He should have gotten it passed. He really did a great job in presenting that issue, and that's the recovery houses. And the state didn't react. My feeling is the state's not going to care what we do up here. The state's not going to react, and so we're going to be stuck with the bill. So I am absolutely for funding PSPRS with a 0.55 until it gets changed. And who knows when that could be. As far as the roads, I am totally on board. Driving around downtown here in Prescott, after you got your coffee all over you and your teeth jarred, I would say I am totally in favor of roads. They made the mistake of doing Park Avenue, and that had me come downtown every morning to go to work. Wow. Okay, I'm going to wrap this up. I am not for the open space. I don't feel like the city of Prescott should have to pay for open space and take taxable property off the tax rolls, since we only have between 12 and 18% Arizona taxable to begin with.
Thank you, Steve. Next, I'd like to introduce Dr. Billy Orr.
Thank you, Billy. Thank you, everyone. It's great to be here today. I am Billy Orr, and I'm the candidate for Prescott Council, and I'm proud to be here. And I'm thankful that you are all here. I've been doing some math and didn't use Common Core math to do it. I've been in Arizona. I came in 1968, 47 years ago. I'd like to say I was 10 at the time, but actually I was 20. And I have loved every moment of my time here in Arizona. I finished Arizona State in 1970, and I began my 25-year teaching career. I was a teacher, principal. I was asked to be appointed to Associate Superintendent for the state for all K-12 education throughout the state. I was in charge of all academics and all curricular areas. We wrote grade standards, and this was the precursor to the Ames test. And then when President Bush went into office, I was asked to go to Washington, D.C. and lead an education reform group there. And then I also had a 10-year career in banking. Some of you might remember Continental Bank. I was Vice President of Human Resources for Continental Bank in the Phoenix area. We had 21 branches and Continental Service Corporation. My charge was customer service, sales, management training. My last actual paying job was at Montana Bible College, great Bible college in Bozeman, Montana, where I was the Director of Communications and Development. I've been very active in my community. I'm extremely active in my church. I go to Willow Hills Baptist Church, very proud of that church. I'm the Director of the Bible Studies for Adult Studies. I'm also very active in the Republican Party. When I was in Montana, I was the the Gallatin County GOP chair, and I was also the vice president of the Republican Women there. I came here and jumped in with both feet. I'm precinct committeeman, and I'm also very active with our Republican women here, vice president last year and president this year. I love this community. I know from being a hands-on leader that the best decisions made are made by those who are closest to the solutions and the situation. I'd like to tell you my stance on these taxes. Usually someone doesn't get up and say, I want to raise your taxes and I want your vote too. But I will tell you, I am behind the 0.55. I absolutely believe that we need to pay our debt. As a fiscal conservative, I want to pay the debt. Unlike the federal government, we cannot print more money. Unlike the state, we cannot cut funding to lots of things that then the county and the city then have to take up those issues. So I am hoping that our citizens will take a strong look at that. It is an unfunded liability. You know, federally, we have a huge unfunded liability, about $220 trillion. We keep complaining about the federal government not doing anything about that unfunded liability. So then why would we, as the citizens of Prescott, not try to be proactive and begin to pay down this debt? Now, I believe we do put pressure, and I know Noel and Karen and Stevers, they're going to get pressure. I believe we need to give the pressure also to Governor Ducey, and certainly to the Speaker. I'm actually disappointed they got out of session this time, and they didn't take on this problem. But I don't think we play chicken with our city. I think we take care of this unfunded liability, let's get started on that, but then let's pressure. How do we do that? We make telephone calls, we write letters, we say, if you want my vote, you do something about this issue. And it's a big issue. PSPRS is a failed system. It is a bad system. There are lots of models out there about things that we can in fact do as a city, and we should look at all of those. So yes, we put the pressure on, but we also take care of our debt. As far as the 1% on the roads, I'm behind that. I think we need to maintain our city. What a beautiful city we have, and why would we look the other way and let it deteriorate? As far as the open space, I'm on record. I wish that had been for maintenance, not for acquisition. I do not support acquiring more open space at this time, especially with the unfunded liability. I'm asking for your vote. Thank you very much. I know how this works.
Thank you, Billy. She had to shut me up at her meeting, so she knows exactly how it goes. So now we have our incumbent Prescott City Councilman, Mr. Jim Lemerson.
Nice to be in a room full of friends. Number one, I want to thank both John and David for acknowledging a lot of our problems are out of our control. Thank you very much. They were not of our making, but we're going to deal with it. I've been married to my wife, Ann, for 43 years. I have been in Prescott 36 years. I am a Rotarian. The first rule of order for a Rotarian is the truth. I'm glad to acknowledge one of my fellow candidates is also a Rotarian. The fact of the matter is we have some core values that are a little different in our opinion. One of the things I present to you is my history, my working with the community, my longevity working on some of the water issues, working on some of the road issues, and they're not small. With regards to the tax issues we present to you, as Allison pointed out to you, and very effectively, the 1 cent sales tax that we collect in the world we live in today generates about $13 million. That $13 million, without federal, state subsidy of some shared revenue form, grants, whatever you call it, is not enough to pay for the services we deliver in the city. We deliver approximately $17 million for police and fire as we do it today. You add the liability of the pension system, it's going to be different. As a fiscal conservative, I'm challenged with asking all of you how you pay for $20+ million with 13. So then you look at the other parts of what that 1 cent pays for. That's your library, that's your general government, and that's your parks and recreation. If we eliminated all of those, they're gone. You're still in the hole. I believe in self-determination. We're a chartered city. We're in charge of our own destiny. I think we have a way to fix this, and I think the voters are not dumb in the city of Prescott. You're right, and it needs to be something we're in charge of, not the legislature that has in the past swept our shared revenues to balance our budget, not the federal government that tinkers with the grants and those things there. I think what we need to do is take charge of who we are. We need to be in a position to say, okay, if we don't need $18 million in the police and fire, let's get rid of them. Then you need to have a plan of what does that mean. Do you privatize your police and fire? I do not support that. We have quality police and fire here. Every one of our firemen is wildland fire training. Every one of our firemen is a hot shot in the literal interpretation of the word. They know what needs to be done. They know how to do it. I support putting them out there to clean up the woods in the city of Prescott and all over the planet. With regards to open space, I wouldn't spend one nickel on open space. Every time we buy open space, we buy another liability. We buy another responsibility. We have to maintain it. We have to pay for the insurance. You know what? It's like the gift that keeps on giving. I think we've done a real good job acknowledging what we could use that revenue fund for over the last 12 years. It was critical to keep the rodeo in Prescott. We saw a way to be able to do that. It was critical to maintain the land around those 2 bodies of water we call Watson and Willow Lake. Now it's time to use those most effectively to generate revenue. So I'm pressuring city management to let's get some RFPs out there to entertain the private sector on redevelopment opportunities to turn those into bed tax and sales tax engines for the city to provide your service. There are issues that we deal with every day. I feel comfortable with my fellow candidates. I support them both very much. I thank you very much. It's been an honor and a pleasure serving you, and I hope I continue. I ask for your vote.
Thank you, Jim. Now, does anybody have any questions for the 3 council candidates?
Excellent, Jim.
Okay. Yes, we do.
Usually when someone decides to run for an office, it's because they're unhappy about at least one particular thing. And with the 2 non-incumbents, I would like to know their primary reason for deciding to run for the council.
Sure. As far as unhappy, I wouldn't say I'm unhappy. I've been going to the council meetings now since the fall. I don't think I've missed any if I've been in town. I would say I would like to see the city be a little more proactive. I see us responding, reacting often. And I guess that's one of the reasons I'm supporting the .55. Here's an opportunity. Let's be proactive. Let's get in front of these issues rather than falling in behind and trying to pick up the pieces. So that's one of my hopes, is that we develop. Another question is going to be on the ballot. It's going to be the first question on the ballot, and that's the general plan. I think it's important that we accept and vote for this general plan to the affirmative. Let's pass the plan. And from that, let's develop a strategic plan, a plan to implement those things that are most important to our cities. So that's one of my issues, is that we be proactive, that we develop a strategic plan.
Thanks. I think that we have done a magnificent job of running the city. However, as I continue on my journey of being a candidate, I think that we are really falling down in some areas of the city in customer service. I'm a retailer. People have to buy into the way you do business in order for you to succeed at business. And so, while it's not the most important thing in the world, I believe finances are, but I think that customer service and people buying into the way we do business as a city, making a conscious decision that they're going to do business with the city of Prescott, whether it's building, whether it's retailers, whether it's people coming in to out there at the airport to bring in small manufacturing facilities. I think that they need to buy into Prescott, and I'm going to try and influence that as absolutely much as possible.
I'm not unhappy. I haven't been unhappy for a long time. There are things that make me unhappy when I have to deal with a lot of the minutia of federal government and state government, and you try and go through a quagmire, whether it's ADA, whether it's HUD, whether it's EPA, whether it's ADWR, whether it's the FAA. We have to deal with it. And I will tell you, we can deal with it in a more positive way than always being in a battle with the very agencies we've got to depend upon to help us. The legislature, we depend upon them. Doesn't do us one bit of good to stand in public and call them the bad guys. They're not. Same thing with the EPA, same thing with HUD. They're not the bad guys. It's our charge to figure out how to work with them. I choose to work with them better than we've worked with them in the past.
Thank you, gentlemen. How about a hand for our candidates? Terry, do you have time for one more question? No. So now we're going to move on to our mayoral candidates. And so you guys, the only thing I ask is that your campaigns don't ask any questions. That's our only rule. And okay, so I'd like to introduce mayoral candidate Harry Oakworth.
Well, good afternoon, and I thank everybody for coming here today to listen to us espouse on the various issues that are facing Prescott. This is my hometown. I was raised here. I graduated from high school here. I have a BS in accounting from NAU. I have a master's from Salvo Regina in international relations, and I graduated from the U.S. Army War College. I spent 33 years in the military, both Army and Army National Guard. I retired from the federal side as a colonel and from the National Guard as a brigadier general. I served 2 tours in Vietnam as an Army helicopter pilot. I've been in charge of large organizations, up to 2,500 people, and I've been responsible for billion-dollar budgets. My last 9 years before I retired, I was at the Pentagon, where I was responsible for $1.5 billion providing equipment and supplies for soldiers that were going to Afghanistan and Iraq. The reason why I'm running for mayor is that this is my hometown, and we have a lot of critical issues facing Prescott. A lot of them are financial, some of them are not. I have the leadership skills and the management skills necessary to help Prescott face these future problems that are coming up, and some of them have already been talked about here a little bit today. I have a 4-point plan if I'm elected mayor, and I'd like to just kind of go over that very briefly with you. First of all, I think it's very important that we reduce the burden on the hardworking taxpayer. The way we're going to do that is we're going to try and get better paying jobs and more jobs in here and improve on the economic development opportunities for Prescott. Secondly, I want to be an unbiased, objective advocate for the taxpayer on all the issues that come up to the city council. Of course, one of those issues right now is public safety retirement system. I want to make my position clear to you today. we need to fix it before we fund it. It's important that we make sure that we have a sustainable system for our firefighters and our policemen. We have people that give us a valuable service, they deserve a good pension, and right now the current system is unsustainable. What we need to do is make sure it is sustainable. And I'm afraid that if we go ahead and pay this right now, yes, we have a debt. We're going to have to pay off this debt. I understand that. But at the same time, we got to make sure that, you know, it doesn't come back and bite the taxpayer time and time again. Every time there's a failure in the system, we're going to have to go back to the taxpayer and make them pay a second and third and fourth time. That's totally unfair for them. It's morally incorrect to do that. So as far as I'm concerned, let's fix it first, and then we fund it. Let's talk about drug rehab. Nobody's talked about that much yet. If I'm mayor, I want to go ahead and establish a civilian task force that would be responsible for taking neighborhood complaints, also looking at EMS and the police calls to the rehab homes. We need to provide information to the Arizona Department of Health and Human Services. Right now, they say that there's not evidence that we have an issue here. And I can tell you, we do have a problem, and zoning is not going to be the way that we fix it. It's going to require an effort from the legislature, and I know that Noel Campbell is working on this very hard, and I think with the information we can compile for him, and if I work with mayors from the other cities like Gilbert and Glendale and Chandler, they have very similar problems. I think we can get the information necessary to get Noel Campbell so that he can take it to the legislature and get some effective control in these homes in the future. The other thing I want, my fourth and last point is we need to secure Prescott's future water source. And I see the way to do that is number one, we have to look at improved conservation. But I think the other thing we have to do also is to get a public-private partnership developed where we can get an affordable way to transport the water from the Big Chino into Prescott. Many people may not realize it, but the 800-pound gorilla in the room when you're talking water is the Arizona Department of Water Resources. They drive the ball. They tell us what to do. They're the ones that said that we were out of safe yield in 1999, and they're requiring us to be in safe yield by 2025. We cannot do that without the Big Chino. They know that. The other thing is they're requiring us to make sure that we do an 8-year plan to ensure that we're not going to affect the headwaters of the Verde. We're 2 years into that plan. From everything I'm hearing, from what I'm seeing, I think it's going to be very positive for us that we're not going to affect the Verde, and we will be able to pump water from the Big Chino. So I'd like to probably expand on these here very quickly if you have any more questions. And I look forward to your questions. I will go ahead and say very quickly, because everybody did talk about it just for a moment. As far as streets, I'm very much for the 0.25 in streets. We have to have that. If we don't do that, we're going to see going from $72 million in backlog up to $100 million in 10 years. We don't want to do that. Just like they said, you know, we don't want to be driving down the roads and spilling our coffee. That's for sure. Or having anything else fall down. So we need to definitely work on trying to get the 1% and keeping it, not only that we have it now, but also in the future for the next 15 years. As far as open space, I'll tell you that open space, okay, I can see you standing up. On open space, you know, it's quality of life for us, both for the residents and for the tourists. But at the same time, when you take a look at all the bills that we have facing us right now, I think we could spend the money more wisely, and so I can't support the 0.085 correction, 0.8 right now on open space. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Now I'd like to introduce mayoral candidate Dan Fryhoe.
Thank you. I appreciate the allowing me to be here and to be able to talk to you about at least what my concerns are. First of all, I just want you to know that my last name is pronounced Fryhoe, and I think you pronounce it correctly, and I appreciate it. A lot of people think of it differently, but it's Fryhoe. I'm a native Arizonan also. I was born in Superior, Arizona, which is a small town about 60 miles okay. It's a little mining town, and that's a good example of what happens when a town shrivels up and dies. But anyway, that's a different story. I started, after we moved to Phoenix, the family moved to Phoenix, that's where I got my education, I got my high school education. However, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, so I was working for my father's small construction company. And there I understood the value of hard work. But by, I think, divine providence, a couple of people talked me into joining the Phoenix Fire Department, which I did. And that basically is what started the journey that has gotten me here to this point today. When I was with the Phoenix Fire Department, I had occasion to be put in different leadership positions, even though I worked my way through the ranks. I started at the very bottom, and even though I did not become the fire chief there, I did get into the levels of higher management. And a lot of the responsibilities that were given to me were basically given to me because of my leadership skills. At that time, I didn't even realize that I had leadership skills, but it started falling into place. Make a long story short, toward the end of my career, I decided that I did have it, and I wanted to become a fire chief. However, during the time that I was working with the fire department, my father's business was going broke. It was going bankrupt. So about the middle of my career, I quit the fire department. And I took over my father's business, I reorganized it, I restructured, did certain things, and then eventually got back into the fire department. The second time I left the fire department was through my retirement from Phoenix, and at that time then I took over the business again, I got it sold and got my father retired. Then's when I started my quest that took me away from Phoenix. And eventually I ended up in Boise, Idaho as a fire chief. Now in Phoenix, just like here, you have a strong manager form of government. In Boise, it was a strong mayor form of government, totally different system. As I kept progressing through different work locations, eventually I was in Santa Barbara County. Now that's a county system, and a special district also. Eventually, I ended up in San Francisco after a tour in Vancouver. In Vancouver, I consolidated 2 large fire departments. At that time, it was the largest department consolidation in the United States. My point is that I've worked almost 40 years in local government. I've worked in diversified government. I've got experience in small government. Well, I say small government, some of those are large cities. Phoenix and San Francisco are very large cities. An incident in San Francisco, I was actually recruited there to assist in the consolidation of fire, police, and EMS into the emergency communication system. And that was quite an accomplishment. That's a strong mayor form of government. But oddly enough, San Francisco is both a city and a county. My entire point to this is that experience has prepared me for just about anything that can happen. Anything from earthquakes that I've managed to political systems that I couldn't manage. It's been an incredible ride. I mean, it's been up and down. I've been politically assassinated, and actually I've been labor-wise assassinated too. However, they were all learning experience. I got a tremendous amount out of it. I don't begrudge anything that's ever happened to me because, for one thing, it got me here in the greatest city that there is in this state. Here's what I want to give back. The reason I'm doing this, it's not because of anything that is negative. And no matter what you hear, it's not been the negative side. It's all been positive. And this is what I want to give back. I want to give back the experience I've had. I want to give back all those things that I've learned over all these years, good and bad. I want to give it back to the city. That's what I offer. On your table, you have a plan. We all know the problems. We need solutions. The plans that you have in front of the table, I hope you'll take a few minutes to look at them, take them home, study them, call me if you have any questions. But essentially what I'm saying is there are certain things that I want to do. If there's one thing that I do want to accomplish more than anything else is that I'm a communicator. I want to sit down, I will listen to you, I will talk to you, I will be transparent, I will answer any question that you have. I don't care how difficult it is, as long as it's not personal. But I also want to tell you that as a mayor, if you bring me a problem, I'm going to ask you 3 questions. Do you see that problem as systemic, personal, or political? We can deal with some of those, we can't deal with all of those. The other thing I'm going to ask of you, and ask everybody in this room, and actually everybody in the city, what recommendations do you have? I think that we can get enough recommendations from the brain power in this city and educational institutions in this city to start doing things more effectively. I don't want to start talking about cuts. If that tax does not pass, I don't want to start talking about cuts. I want to start talking about efficiencies and cost avoidance, cost savings, whatever term you want to put on it. We'll get into the ugly issues. You're going to be making a decision here soon. Actually, there's 4 parts to it. One of them is the general plan. The other one's streets, pensions, and roads. If I had my preference, 2 of those would not be on the ballot at all. I think they're too complex, they're somewhat divisive, and I think that those are decisions the council could make. But they're on the ballot. Streets, essential. Pension, essential. I am supporting open space, not because I want to buy bushes and trees and for the road runners to run through. I'm supporting it because that's part of the maintenance program that's going to be required to maintain what we have. However, if we can get some iconic parts of Prescott, not Goldwater Lake, not anywhere else, some iconic parts of Prescott, absolutely we should do that. I saw that success in Phoenix with the mountain preserves. It happened in the 70s. We started buying those areas that are important, and those areas don't have homes built on them. There's not a lot of maintenance because there's road runners, bushes, and trees. So I am supporting all 3 of those. But I wish 2 of those could have waited. I think that we could do more in the development of the need for those than we have done so far. Because I'm afraid that government has a tendency to make single-focused decisions. And we have to start making decisions that are more global in nature. And I'll give you the best example. We've all talked about it, the pension system. The pension system is a good example of a lot of little good decisions that have turned out to be a huge bad decision. Because each one of those components of that good decision turned out to be bad. We have to start looking at things a little bit more definitively and a little bit more at a global level. Oh, he said yes, incidentally. Thank you. I'm running to give something back. I'm running because I have experience. My experience has been in local government. It hasn't been anywhere else. It's been in business, where I ran my father's business for 15 years. I only managed it, really. That's what I want to bring back. People talk about politician. I'm not a politician. Incidentally, that's one of the things I want to leave with you. I've been in service my entire career. I am not a politician. And even after the election, I will not consider myself a politician. I'm here to serve you. And what I want is for you to tell us what you want. One of the propositions that you're going to see that I'm suggesting is I'd like to see city council meetings held in the evening, not in the afternoon. Most of the population here is still working. He said, I just got started. Anyway, please look at some of those issues, and I'll be more than glad to talk to them here or anywhere else. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Dan. All right, now, do we have some questions for our mayoral candidates? Okay, we have one in the back.
Hi, this question is for candidate Friday. As you know, a lot of the cities across the country are under a heavy tax burden because the working population is now unemployed, a lot of it is, and so the tax basis has shrunk. And my question to you is, as the mayor, what are you going to do about these contracts? I have high respect for the fire department, the police, and the EMS, and all of those, and the military. But my question to you is that something's going to have to be done with these lucrative contracts that are built out in good times, but we can't afford it now in bad times. What's your suggestion, and what could you do about it? Because I know you're linked with the fire department. So, thank you.
Absolutely. The question was, what do we plan to do with the lucrative plans, as I understood the question? First of all, the Prescott Fire Department does not have a contract or memorandum of understanding. So there is no negotiations. That's number one. Number two, our city charter does not allow any type of negotiation with individuals or with bargaining units. So in that regard, it doesn't happen here. So that's That's the reality. I don't know if there was any more intent to that in your question, but our fire and police have basically been working under the whatever cooperation the city does, whatever arrangements are being made. So I hope that answers your question, but that's in fact the way it is. You cannot negotiate in the city of Prescott according to the city charter.
Thank you. This is a question for Mr. Kennedy Frejo. Did I say that right?
Freiho.
Frejo. Thank you, sir.
All right, now look, Harry, you need to respond to the last question.
First of all, I think you're absolutely correct. If you look around the United States, there's a lot of places that are suffering under heavy public pension problems. So Prescott is not unique. So I think what we have to do, though, is look at, just like it showed up there a little while ago, almost 75% of our general fund is going toward police and fire. That covers their wages, pensions, and operations. So it leaves very little left for us to be able to tackle the $72 million that we have. The big problem right now is, we've had a system that was mismanaged. They made bad investments, and we also had a court case that went against us, where they went with the firefighters, but they went against the taxpayer. So when you take a look at that, you got to say, what's fair to the taxpayer? I had one gentleman come up to me sometime back and he said, I paid for it once, now you asked me to pay for it twice. When you take a look at it, there was a downturn in 2000. There was another downturn in 2008. Right now they seem to be cycling at about every 7 to 8 years. So we're coming up on another potential downturn. If that occurs, what are we going to do if the fund continues to lose? We need to be fair with the firefighters, the policemen. We have to make sure that they have a viable retirement system. And the one that we have right now is unsustainable. So the thing we have to do is we have to fix it. And we have to keep the pressure on the legislature down there to try and get a fix, I hope, this year. I know that Representative Noel Campbell and Representative Karen Fan have been working to try and get something going. I know that they're looking at it right now. I just saw the Arizona Capital Times. They were talking about trying to bring this up. I don't think it's going to be a special session, but I think they're starting to look at what they can do right now to reform the system. So I think what we need to do is keep the pressure on them, and I think it's very important for the people of this community and many other communities in Arizona that have the same problem, that we ensure that we're getting letters and phone calls into our state leadership and telling them we need to see this thing fixed.
David Stringer with a question for Mr. Frejo. Did I get it right?
Now let's see you spell it.
My question, Mr. Frejo, you said that if the pension tax 0.55 does not pass, that you will look at efficiencies before you look at cuts.
That's correct.
Right. So does that imply that if the 0.55 does not pass, that you won't be looking at those efficiencies?
Absolutely not.
And could you be a little specific about what kind of efficiencies you're going to be looking at?
Sure, I'd be more than glad to. Did everybody hear the question?
Yeah.
Okay. The efficiency that I'm looking for is either way, whether that passes or not. What I hope to do is be able to get information from people, all people, any people, on better ways of doing business. And optimistically, I'm shooting for, say, 5%. If we could save 5% based on efficiencies, we're talking about $7 to $8 million. Now, that might be too much, I don't know, but anything will work. But the important thing is I want that information coming from as many people as possible. Either way. Now, if we have to start, the second part of that then would be if it does not pass. If it does not pass, then we're going to have to start looking at the most efficient way to minimize the impact, and the impact is going to be monstrous. Now, what exactly that means, I don't know yet. I don't have that part of that plan yet. But what I'm doing, once again, is I want employees, I want department heads, city management, all of us to come up with something that we can do. Now, the reason I say I'm not sure of that, because I don't want to start using fear tactics. The fear tactics typically for cities, and I'm telling you, I've been all over the place, are we're going to start cutting. Now, the 3 essential services that cities provide, public safety, fire police rather, or health and safety. The health and safety part, for the most part, is taken care of by public works. Police and fire are there to educate, prevent, and respond. The reason the budget's so big is because that's what takes the most money to hire the people, to keep the people in those working areas. It's not just the pensions. It's to hire and keep those people, because people want response when they need it. We want to educate and we want to prevent, to avoid the response. So I don't want to use fear tactics and tell you we're going to close the library. That's $101.8 million. I don't want to do that. I don't want to start talking about laying off people. I don't want to do that either. However, if we get to that point, then we're going to have to decide who's going to be laid off, and we're going to have to decide, or you're going to have to decide, what services you would still like to keep. Then the kicker to that is how much you're willing to pay for it.
Well, again, I think Dan hit it pretty clear on a couple things, and that is, if we don't pass the 0.55, we're going to have to start looking very closely at the budget and figure out what we're going to have to cut. Again, I don't want to be the one that says what's going to happen, because they're going to start looking at that before I even get in. So, which is true. They're already talking about on 26 August, they're going to have to start making some decisions, and I would not take over if I'm elected until very late in November. But either way, we're going to have to be looking at cutting some things. There might be some efficiencies. There's hardly ever a budget I've worked on that I haven't been able to find ways to find efficiencies and save some money. So I haven't had a real opportunity to look at our budget here and see if there are some areas that we can save money, but I think there is. One other point I'd like to make is, one thing that would help us too, if we have to start paying this, is if we can get the legislature to authorize us to use some kind of a pension bond. Right now, if we have to start paying this thing, we're going to be paying 7.78% on the unpaid balance every year, which means that in about 20 years, we'll be paying about $165 million. If we can get a pension bond, and I've talked to the finance guy, Mr. Woodfield, he said, we get a pension bond for 2 to 3%. We can cut what we owe and also probably pay it off earlier. That's going to require a legislative fix. They're going to have to authorize that, and right now, we're not authorized to do a pension bond. But it's one of the things I think we need to look at in the near future.
Corey, we got a guy right here that has his hand up first.
I just have a question about fire safety for Prescott. We've all enjoyed the last year of terrific rain, which in a few years will put us at increased risk for fire. A catastrophic fire could destroy Prescott forever. What will be your approach, and this goes to council members as well as mayoral candidates, to fire prevention and saving Prescott from that disaster?
One of the things I would like to try and do is bring in a forest, bring in a forest products industry. They're already doing this over on the eastern side of the state. They're thinning their forests. It's important for us to do the same thing here. Right now we have overgrowth in our forest. We have about 400 trees per acre, and historic growth is about 50 to 60 trees per acre. If we could reduce the biomass in our forest, it would do 3 things. It would reduce our potential for wildfires. It would also allow more water to go into the aquifer. They say maybe up as high as 25%. And also it would probably reduce any kind of infestations like bark beetle. So we can use the biomass in 2 ways. One of the things is to produce wood products, MDF board, wood pellets for stoves, and the other area is, of course, is energy. They do have an energy plant right now producing electricity over the eastern side of the state. People may not know it, but Drake, the cement company out of Drake, which is just north of Paulden, produces cement and uses coal as their source of electricity to run the plant. They want to get away from coal because of all the EPA requirements coming down, and they would like to use biomass. So I think if we can get a company to come in here, and I understand that there's a number of private companies that would like to come in and produce electricity, they can take a lot of the overburden that we have in the forest, the slash, a lot of the down timber, and burn that and produce electricity. This could help us in a couple of ways. Not only would it produce electricity for a cement plant, it could also probably be utilized to fund some of our schools. Either we provide electricity to the schools, or any of the money that we earn off of state lands will be used in the Secure Rural Schools Act to provide money for the schools and give them more operating capital. So I think it's kind of a win-win, and I think I answered your question on trying to reduce the wildfire potential.
I think that's a great answer. I also would question, what about the slash problem, which was everywhere?
Yeah.
Within our periphery of our city.
Yeah. Well, one of the things, I've talked to Southwest Industries, and they said that if there was a biomass facility here, they would give all the slash to them. That way they wouldn't burn it, it wouldn't be, creating carbon in the air and pollution. It would be used in the factory or the industry.
And there's a great deal of truth in what my candidate is saying. Absolutely a lot of truth in that. I think the biggest difference that we might have is how we get that in the first place. Who does it? How much does it cost? And what are the efficiencies to it? My preference would be to still have a crew of people that work directly for the city, that are responsible for that kind of vegetation management, if you will, that are also trained in firefighting. And the reason I say this is because historically, we all know that the most important phase of fire control is where it starts. That's the most important part. When you can keep a fire at its point of origin, you'll have success, and you've seen it around here from time to time. Once it starts getting larger and larger and larger, obviously, and I'm sure that you've all seen a grass fire where the fire just literally skimming over the top of the grass. That's what happens when fire gets in the tree, in the canopy of the trees. It starts literally skimming over the trees. We want to stop it as soon as possible. So I would like to see the city's in control of where that vegetation mitigation is going to take place, how it's done, how it's evaluated, and then whatever's ground up or chopped up or slashed or whatever, then we can have the biomass people come in and take it and use it any way they want. But to me, it's important. Now, it is not just important to me because we want to keep more fire people there. It is important to me because if we have a wildland fire, I want to stop it as close to where it starts. I don't want to stop it over here on Gurley Street. And that's what happens. And anybody that doesn't believe that, just study fire behavior. That's what happens. Once a fire gets to a certain point, you start projecting miles ahead. Miles ahead, you start projecting where you're going to stop that fire. There's one thing I bring to you is expertise in public safety.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Harry. Sorry, I'm out of time, guys.
Just, if you didn't get enough of the candidates today, we have televised interviews of all the candidates on Channel 13 Access, Wednesdays at 9 p.m., Sundays at 4 p.m. They'll be televising that through the election, August 25th.
Thank you, Malcolm. All right, now I'd like to thank all of our candidates here today. Everything's been pretty informative, and so it'll be fun to see how it goes. Steve gets to draw the lucky number.
Barry?
Yeah.
Before you give away the money, somebody let